It was a dark and stormy night. The already foreboding woods of New Jersey, if it were possible, took on an even more threatening nature than they normally exhibited on any other day. Whatever lurked in their darkness was doubly covered under the fall of night. As the pine barrens echoed the night's unpleasantness, there was another sound that rang out. One that didn't seem to fit with the sinister aura of the woods that evening. Because somewhere, lost in the darkness of the night, was a lonely cabin. And in this cabin, Jane Leeds was in the process of giving birth. This was nothing new to Jane. She'd been here 12 times before, and she was tired of it. So, when she had discovered that another child was on the way, she did something that she hadn't done on the other 12 occasions. She let her voice ring out with a strong clarity and conviction, and said, "Let this child, the 13th child, be a devil." After she had shouted these thoughts into the wind, she thought no more about it. Until this evening, that is, as she lay in labor with several friends and the midwife surrounding her on this dark and stormy night in the pine barrens. These words came floating back into her mind. She would be thinking about her words as the baby was delivered into the world, as it soon was, a normal, pink baby, not a devil. Well, not yet, anyway. There were congratulatory comments all around, and adoration for the new baby. But all of that was not to last. After a short moment, the feeling in the room would change as the baby started to make strange movements. Soon, these movements gave way to transformation. Goat hooves appeared. Wings resembling those of a bat grew out of the child's back, and the head changed shape right in front of everyone's eyes into that of a goat. A forked tail appeared out of the child's back and began whipping back and forth with furiosity, striking many of the people who were present in the room. Those present reacted in shock and horror, frozen in place, jaws hanging agape. The poor midwife, perhaps out of a strong sense of duty, developed over many deliveries, over many years, held tight to the creature as it began making ear-splitting screams and struggling to be free. It was a struggle. It eventually won. At this point, it flew around the room, beating people with its tail before making its escape up the chimney and into the miserable, dark, and stormy night. All eyes turned to Mother Leeds, who looked just as shocked as one might think, as her words from 9 months ago played on repeat through her head. Undoubtedly, this tale was taken with a wink over a pint of beers in times following these events. I mean, what rational person would believe such a tale? The tale itself may have faded into obscure corners of history and remained mostly forgotten if it weren't for the sightings. One of the first sightings of the Jersey Devil in the written record comes from Stephen Decatur. In the early 19th century, he made a visit at Hanover Mill to inspect the cannonballs being forged there, when he spotted a massive winged creature flying near the mill. He doesn't give us an estimate of its size, but it seems that it was imposing enough that he fired on it. However, the fire had no effect, and the creature casually went off and disappeared. Joseph Bonaparte, who was the brother of Napoleon, claimed to have seen the creature while hunting in his estate during the year of 1820. In 1840, there was a string of mysterious livestock killings. With no idea what could have done it, the Jersey Devil was blamed. These killings were followed by another string of livestock killings in 1841. But the 1841 slayings were different. In these slayings, there were sets of mysterious hoofprints left behind, as well as the blood-curdling screams heard during the night. In December of 1925, there was a new development. A farmer living in Greenwich County shot an animal and proceeded to photograph it. According to his word, he showed the photo that he took to at least 100 people. No one could identify the beast. This photo, however, seems to have been lost if it ever existed at all. The Pennsylvania Bulletin printed an article on July 27, 1937, covering a rash of sightings on the previous day of an unknown animal with distinct red eyes that was seen in Downingtown, Pennsylvania. It is important to note, however, that it was the writer of the article, not the people in it, that linked the sightings to those of the Jersey Devil. In 1951, a group of boys gained a certain amount of local notoriety when they claimed to have seen the devil in Gibbstown, New Jersey, while others posit that its body was discovered in 1957. Just 3 years after the body of the Jersey Devil was supposedly discovered, people near Mays Landing began to hear unearthly noises in the night that nobody could identify. This was not the first time that they had been heard that year, as they had complained of such things previously. However, the noises which were heard now were accompanied by strange tracks on the ground. The merchants around Camden were apparently so convinced of its existence that they pulled together a $10,000 reward to be paid out upon its capture, and even offered to build a zoo solely to house the creature. It seems obvious, due to the fact that I am presently recording an episode about the Jersey Devil, that a capture of the creature never took place, and a zoo was never built, thus leaving this tale in the dark recesses of the mind, where things are oft pondered but never solved. However, there were a string of sightings that occurred which are even more convincing than anything we have spoken of up to this point. This wave of sightings occurred from January 16th through the 23rd in the year 1909. During this 8-day span of time, the encounters with the creature numbered in the hundreds. The range of these sightings spanned from South Jersey into the Pennsylvania area. Trolley cars were attacked in Haddon Heights. Leaving several witnesses of the same event. Social clubs were attacked in Camden, leaving many people shaken. Police in Camden, Pennsylvania caught up to the creature and fired several rounds into it with no effect whatsoever. More footprints were found in the snow, with more people reporting them as far away as Delaware and Maryland. Newspapers for miles around printed the story, and a dark, palpable fear settled over the New Jersey area. Schools were closed down in the panic, and people stayed home from work to try to avoid meeting up with this particular celebrity. During this time, a few brave souls loaded up their guns and took to the Pine Barrens in search of the creature. While these men were searching for the Jersey Devil, the Philadelphia Zoo caught wind of the hunt and offered a substantial reward to whoever was able to deliver the creature to them. This, of course, prompted many varieties of hoaxes. One famous example of such a hoax was a kangaroo that someone scrounged up from somewhere in New Jersey and glued claws and wings to it in hopes of cashing in on the reward. Needless to say, the reward was never paid out, and the kangaroo creature was sent hopping in spite of many a protest that it really was the monster. So what are we to make of all this? Let's start with Mrs. Leeds. The story seems like something made up, and it may well have been. However, historians did uncover a will which was written in 1736 by one Jozef Leeds, who named his 12 children in it. His wife's name was listed as Deborah Leeds rather than Jane, however. Is it possible that in retellings of the story over time, the name of Mrs. Leeds was changed from Deborah to Jane? It is certainly possible. And she did have the 12 children spoken of in the legend. Certainly having 12 children doesn't prove that number 13 is a monster, however. It was the norm for people to have large families at that point in time. Skeptics of this tale, and unsurprisingly there are many, say that this tale is an amalgamation of several tales rather than it being a single tale. They say that all of these tales came together over the years into a single tale, and they involve someone we all know. Politics hasn't changed through the years. It has always been a dangerous game carried out between its players. Back in the 18th century, there may not have been televisions with negative ads geared towards instilling a sense of hatred towards one's rival opponent, but there was something else: gossip, which often took on a life of its own and, if circulated enough, turned into legend. Anyone familiar with the nursery rhyme concerning Lizzie Borden knows the truth of this. The 18th century brought with it a bitter political rivalry between Benjamin Franklin and his rival almanac publisher. The rival's name should be familiar. It was Daniel Leeds. You see where this is heading. The explanation that skeptics give for the Jersey Devil is that the political gossip by those who favored Franklin ended up labeling Leeds as the Leeds monster, and from thence a great fire of gossip was kindled, which led to the legend we all know today. The Leeds publication had other things about it that rubbed people the wrong way. Leeds made extensive use of astrological symbols, which made the Quaker community rise up against him, astrological symbols were seen as too blasphemous and pagan to print, and many were burned in response. Leeds' own response to this was to double down on his publications of astrological symbols and start a campaign against the Quakers. The Quaker community dismissed Leeds as evil. When his son inherited the almanac, he continued to publish the same symbology and didn't win any more friends in the meantime. In 1733, Franklin hit back, using his own almanac to satirically predict Leeds' death, much to his chagrin. Leeds published a response calling Franklin a fool and a liar, after which Franklin continued with his joke, suggesting that Leeds had actually died and was now writing as a ghost, even after he actually died in 1738. The occult association with the Leeds family and Franklin's ongoing joke about him being a ghost could possibly have eventually led to the creation of the Leeds Devil story. Another thing that could have driven the nail home in this explanation is that in 1728, Titan Leeds started exhibiting the Leeds family crest on his almanac. On the crest was a wyvern, a mythological creature that was dragon-like with bat wings on its back. Daniel Leeds had 9 children, rather than the 12 of legend. But what are numbers when one is slandering one's opponents? It is not beyond the scope of possibility, and well within the bounds of probability, that the number was exaggerated from 9 to 12 for the sake of attaining an unlucky 13 from it all. Leeds had also acquired land in the Pine Barrens, which today is called Leeds Point. As a man who was very loyal to the British Crown, perhaps the Pine Barrens became associated with a foul connotation on his behalf due to the fact that everyone else hated the Crown. This would be the end of the mystery, except that it's not. Sightings continue to this day, often leaving behind very shaken witnesses. In 1980, Forest Ranger Alan McFarland came across a scene that left him speechless. On a farm located in South Jersey, a pack of pigs had been killed in an unusual way, a manner he had never witnessed before. In all his time as a ranger, this was a first for him. The pigs lay on their stomachs, their backs eaten by something unseen. There were no tracks to be found that didn't belong to the pigs, and nary a drop of blood on the ground. It was as if whatever had attacked the pigs had been, and remained, airborne for the duration. McFarland didn't see a devil or any other kind of creature, but others have. In 1988, a Howell Township citizen claimed to have been close to the creature and gave an Asbury Park Press reporter a very detailed description. Also in the late 80s, a group of dirt biking friends claimed that all of their bikes had stalled at once, and they had heard a piercing, inhuman scream coming from the woods, and hightailed it back to the camp. Perhaps the most unnerving account comes from a resident of the Pine Barrens who was enjoying the snow with her children near Christmas one year. After going inside for supper, she realized she'd forgotten to turn off the Christmas lights and went back out with her son. Suddenly, he started gasping. When she looked up at him, she saw his terrified face, and he was pointing up into the trees. When she looked up, she saw a giant winged creature in silhouette in the trees. A moment later, it swooped down on them, and she grabbed her son and took off for the house. As they were running, they felt the creature fly over their heads very close and land on the roof. Then the creature started coming back with audible steps to the end of the roof, but she made it inside before it could come back for them. In the morning, her husband woke her to show her the roof. There were sizable footprints that he couldn't identify going across it, and he took pictures of it. Experts looked at the pictures, and although they couldn't identify the tracks, they did say that the melting snow could exaggerate their size or distort their shape. A forensic artist worked with several people who had had recent sightings, including the previous witness we just spoke of, to come up with a composite of the creature which would, in turn, be used to create a sculpture. After the composite was finished, a sculpture artist set to work using it to create a sculpture of the creature. After it was finished, it was shown to all of the witnesses who helped to create the composite. They all panicked. Is the Jersey Devil real? Or is it name-calling gone horribly wrong? Are people misidentifying nature? Why do many of the accounts of the mass sightings in 1909 seem to describe different monsters? Most of all, what, if anything, is watching unseen from the Pine Barrens? If you like this content, go ahead and hit that subscribe button, and I'll see you on the next video.